Hello and welcome to today's episode of Wanderlust Wednesdays. My name is Joost Ouendag and I will be talking to you about the Danube Waltz. What you see there in the background is a wonderful picture of what's called the upturned bed. That's the not so flattering nickname of the Bratislava castle that you see here in the background. As always, before we start, there's a short little introductory video and James, hit it.
Our Danube Waltz itinerary offers 8 days of enrichment amid the cultures of 3 European countries. Stroll the cobbled streets of Passau, Germany. Enjoy a call in Linz, Austria. Experience the true beauty of the region with scenic sailing on the Danube through the enchanting Wachau Valley. Then it's on to Krems with its still-working Gottweig Abbey. In Imperial Vienna, you'll be seduced by history and Baroque splendor. Tour Slovakia's capital of Bratislava and see its imposing castle. Before arriving in your final destination, magnificent Budapest.
Okay, so here we go, the Danube Waltz from Budapest to Passau. That's the direction we're picking. You can also do it from Passau to Budapest. We're fine either way. It's 8 days. It includes 6 guided tours, quite a number of optional excursions as well. You visit 4 countries, and I will just walk you through it. This is a picture, by the way, of the Abbey Church of Gottweig, and we come to speak about that in a little bit. Day 1 is in Budapest. That's just your day of embarkation, and if you get there a little early, you have some time to walk around on your own. The ship staff will help you to find your way, and off you go. Then the day 2 is all of Budapest, morning city tour, afternoon, again, some optional excursions or time to do whatever you want to do. Day 3 is Bratislava, the capital of Slovakia. Day 4 is Vienna, the capital of Austria. Day 5 is Krems, a small college town along the Wachau Valley. And then on day 6, you're in Linz. And Linz offers you a number of different options. One of them is going over to the Czech Republic. This is very much a Central European itinerary. If you look at a map of Europe, you will find that Austria pretty much sits smack dab in the middle of the continent. And then you have a final night in Passau, and Passau is also the city where you then end your cruise. That's where you disembark. On both ends, there are extensions that allow you to do a little bit more, and we'll get to those also in a minute. So this is a beautiful picture of James. You're not. Yeah, there we go. You weren't keeping up. This is the chain bridge in Budapest, and there you see one of our ships in the foreground. This is such a good picture to kind of highlight what a river cruise is all about. You're in the middle of a city. You walk out, and there's that beautiful building in the foreground, just at the foot of the chain bridge. That is the Gresham Palace. That is a beautiful Art Nouveau building that's now a hotel. And you also just get to walk along the Danube, up and down the Danube. It's a beautiful walk in the evening. That's all you really need to do there. There's lots of things to do in Budapest, but just walking up and down the Danube is, in my mind, the best thing ever. A little wind in your hair. It's gorgeous. A map, then. We will show you what we are looking at in the way of, geography. So you can see that you start in Budapest, as I described. You travel then quite a bit along the border between Hungary and Slovakia. In that area, you go through the Lock of Kovačica, which is a no, I'm saying that wrong. I'll get to it in a moment. I made a mistake there, but I will remember. A very large lock between Slovakia and Hungary. Very contentious lock at one point because the countries didn't always see eye to eye as to who should pay for the lock, who would benefit from it most, and so on and so forth. Then you travel quite a distance through Austria, and Passau happens to be just inside of Germany. It's just across the German border. And then you see in the top portion of the map, the Czech Republic, where you can either go through an extension to Prague or you can visit the city of Český Krumlov. We get to all that. Let's start on the Budapest end with the extension that we offer you there. It's 2 nights in Budapest, and it's really a program that is set up with a very light touch. And what I mean by that is we book you hotels, we get you breakfast, we get you, and this is probably the most important ingredient. It's easily overlooked, but it's absolutely crucial. We get you a desk with a host. And this is not just someone that sits there and looks pretty. This is someone who knows the city and who can help you hour by hour map out the time that you have in Budapest. This is kind of how you have to think about, I think, organized travel in general. You give us your time, and it's our job to make the most out of that time. And that's what the hosts are for in these hotels in Budapest. You have a lot more freedom. You can book some optional excursions as well, but the overall idea here is that you have time to do with as you please. And then another question that always we start with is, when's the best time to go? And I always give the same answer. It really depends. So we travel this stretch between roughly April and mid-December. And by the end of November, early December, they are converted into Christmas market cruises that have a slightly different itinerary and a slightly stronger emphasis on spending time in the towns where the Christmas markets are. But overall, you can travel this stretch of the river from spring to early winter, if you will. And so now it depends a little bit on what it is that you want. If you need it to be really nice and warm, travel in July and in August. If you're fine with wearing a sweater like this, maybe you can travel any time of the year. It never really gets incredibly cold. In August, it does get quite warm. So if you're not good with warm weather, don't travel in August. Just stay away from August. Other than that, the question is always, well, it's rainy season. Doesn't really exist in Europe. You have a climate that is moderate, and that basically means that in any month of the year, there will be some rain. And yes, generally there is more rain in spring and in fall than there is in summer, but there is rain throughout the year. This also, while we're at it, is important to understand when it comes to high and low water. We might get into that a little bit more in detail, but I read this article on CNN a while ago about how the rivers of Europe are drying up. And that was possibly the worst piece of clickbait I had ever seen, because it didn't just show pictures of rivers running dry in Europe. It also showed rivers. It showed the Colorado River between Nevada and Arizona. I have no idea what that has to do with Europe. It also shows the Loire River in France. That is a river that normally runs half dry. It's not a river that any river cruise ships really navigate on successfully. So the death of river cruising was somewhat premature. Right now, for instance, we have quite a few ships that are traveling up and down the Danube. Waters are fine. And actually, this year was not a particularly bad year when it comes to low river levels. We have not had to cancel a single cruise. We've had to make some adjustments, but we have experience with that. And so that's not such a big deal anymore. So make the temperature and the kind of weather. In spring, you'll have a little bit more rain. It'll be a little cooler. In fall, a little bit more rain, a little bit cooler. In winter, you really want to focus on the Christmas markets. That's in a nutshell what you need to know, what you need to understand when it comes to seasonality. Okay, and then we just start to get into the day by days. And this, to start off with, is Budapest. This is, and this is a very classic picture of Buda and Pest. It's the first story that local guides will tell you as well. So I'll tell you, Budapest is really a contraction of two cities. There is the city of Buda on the, and that would be the right bank of the river. And when it comes to right or left bank, the way it always works is you point yourself mentally in the downriver direction. And then whatever is on your right is always the right bank. You turn around and upriver, that bank is now on the left, but it's still called the right bank. Buda is on the right bank, Pest is on the left bank. What you can see here in the background is that part of the city is flat as a pancake, where Buda is on a number of hills. And then there's also Óbuda, which is the oldest part of Budapest that dates back to Roman times. Hungary, Slovakia, Austria, Germany, it's not what you think about when you think about Roman ruins, but you will be surprised at the Roman heritage that you can still find there, the vestiges of the Roman Empire. And this is because the Danube at one point was the limes. It was the border of the Roman Empire. Here be civilized Romans, across the river be the barbarians. So, and along that border, along that watery border, there were always fortifications. And a lot of cities grew up from these Roman fortifications. Vienna is another example. Bratislava, not so much, but we'll get to that. So this is the Fisherman's Bastion. This is a beautiful sunset over, or actually it might be a sunrise. It's a little hard to see, but it's that perfect time of day. One way or another, I'm going to check now. I think it could be a sunrise, yes. This is what the ship looks like on the inside. So the beautiful thing to do is those first few hours of sailing, when you sail through Budapest as the ship leaves, that's when you want to be up and about. That's when you want to spend some time on the sun deck or on the aquaviters, on the bow, to look outside, or on your stateroom balcony, because that's when it really starts. And Budapest has a perfect skyline. The river runs through the town. There's beautiful bridges crossing on certain intervals, and it is one of those things that you do this and you're like, I get it now. It's a river cruise. You then, before we continue on, I'm getting a prompt in my version of this of my presentation. We're going to play you a little video that shows you what you can do in Budapest during those few days before you travel. Book those 2 nights extra in Budapest, and then Karina will tell you a few things that you can do while you're there that are easily doable on your own, that your local host will help you with, getting tickets for, finding your way there, geography. You can travel to a lot of places in Budapest. It's very easy with public transportation. But enough talking. Let's watch this video.
Budapest, once hidden behind the Iron Curtain, is a delight for the senses.
Budapest is known as the Pearl of the Danube, and there's so much beauty to see in this city, but this must be the best place to start your exploration.
Fisherman's Bastion, perched high above the Danube, was built in 1895. It has 7 towers to honor the area's 7 original tribes and offers phenomenal views. Budapest's Great Market Hall dates to 1896. It's a literal and figurative feast with bursts of color and temptations everywhere you look, and a treasure loved by both tourists and the locals. Millennium Memorial, also known as Hero Square, is a grand monument and home to a collection of imposing sculptures of the Magyar chieftains who founded Hungary in the 9th century. A somber stop, but one well worth making, is at the Shoes on the Danube, where 60 pairs of iron shoes provide an enduring memorial to the victims shot into the Danube at the end of World War II. And behind this grand facade is something really special. The Sydney Thermal Baths, a complete wellness centre which has operated on the site since 1881.
I can think of no better way to start or end your stay here in Budapest than at the thermal baths. I think I may just spend the entire day here.
We can't wait to share Viking's real Budapest with you. See you soon. Viszlát!
Okay, so that gave you a few ideas. I love that building with the green roof. I don't know if you noticed that. It's a very iconic Budapest building. It houses a museum of applied arts, and it's a little difficult to navigate because everything is in Hungarian, but it has an incredible collection of Art Nouveau interior decorative elements, lamps, shades, furniture. It's a beautiful little museum. Love it. And it's Art Nouveau in Budapest really had its very, very own expression, very Hungarian style Art Nouveau. Highly recommend that one. And then this is an important image because we like to think that what we do on all of our days along the Danube, and this goes for most of our rivers, where we can, we like to cater to people that are active. We don't carry bicycles on the ship. Not convenient. We don't have a bicycle mechanic. The cities, every city by now along the rivers in Europe has really good facilities for bicycles where we get them, where we get you a bicycle guide, where we get someone that can actually fix your bike while you're riding it. And these become part of an excursion program. And that way you have someone that travels with you, and you can still get in all your exercise. You can be as active or as not so active as you want on our cruises. That's kind of what the optional excursions allow you to do, to tailor make the program to your own liking. And this is not something that you need to do when you're there. You can do this in your planning. You will find the information that you need, including timings and what you need to bring, what kind of bicycles these are. You find all this in your app that you get when you book with us, and you can start booking shore excursions the moment you've booked your cruise, pretty much. If you book very far in advance, the shore excursions may not be open yet, but overall, you can do this earlier, sooner, rather than later. Okay, and then here we are. Again, this is Bratislava, the upturned bed. As you can see, Bratislava sits right between Budapest and Vienna. And it's a kind of an interesting mix. It reminds me more of Vienna than of Budapest. It doesn't have these. Budapest has some very, very Hungarian, very almost Eastern European bits of flavor. And Bratislava reminds me more of Vienna than of Budapest. But it's you know, Slovakians would hate for me to say this because they think of their own country as, you know, Slovakian, and it is. It has some very nice touches that you will not find in either one of the other two cities. One of the things that they've done really well in Bratislava, and this is more of a recent period, when I first started to come there, and that's now 20 years ago, it was still very much a city that started to come out of 40 years of communism. And today it's beautiful. Everything that they had in the way of cumbersome fences and buildings where you needed to have your passport stamped and things like that, all of that is gone, and you have this beautiful promenade now along the Danube. So it's a joy. It's really a city that has turned its face again towards the river. It's very eclectic. It has some really quirky statuary throughout the town. There's one of a gentleman, and you've seen this because it's such a popular Instagram motif. It's this bronze man that comes out of a manhole cover, and he wears a helmet, and he's smack dab in the middle of the pedestrian zone. And it's fun. There are quite a few more of that. This shows you more of what the traditional architecture looks like in Bratislava. And you can see it was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire during the early 18th century. And this is where you find these columns and these fountains, and in the background you see that yellowish church tower, these pastel colors. This is all Baroque architecture that's very typical of Central Europe. And this gives you a bit of an idea of the city. You can see that Bratislava is surrounded by hills on the northern side of the Danube. The Danube kind of runs a little bit east-west here, or rather west-east, because the Danube ends up in the Black Sea. So from west to east, and then the city sits on these hills that overlook more of a flat area, and in good weather you can look all the way to Hungary. This also shows you the main street through Bratislava, and just to the right of that is the Matthias Church, which is the cathedral of the city. Not a super spectacular building. It's really interesting, but it's more interesting for its history than for its interior. It's a fine interior, don't get me wrong, but it's really, you know, the layers of history of some emperors of the Austro-Hungarian Empire were buried there. It's part of the walking tour that we do in the city, and a walking tour or a panoramic tour, those are kind of your standard options of getting to know Bratislava. Where you can, I would always pick a walking tour. And not everyone can, and the distances are not huge, but you need to be able to walk for, you know, a good hour or so, and that's not for everyone. But if you can, do the walking tour. You can also visit a family in Bratislava. They own a vineyard, and they have been receiving guests from all over the world for years by now. And they tell you what they do, you know, what the business is like. Like I said, they own a large house with a vineyard. And it's really a chance to kind of have like a kitchen table conversations with people, with Slovakians in this case. Next, after Bratislava, you're going to Vienna. And this image is the Belvedere Palace, one of my absolute favorite spots in Vienna. Also, one of the things that is maybe a little bit more off the beaten path than some of the other big attractions. If you've been to Vienna before and you've seen, for instance, the Hofburg, and that's the next slide, so keep that in the back of your head, Hofburg, next slide. And you've seen Schönbrunn, which is the grand residence of Maria Theresia. Those are probably the most famous of the grand palaces and the grand buildings in Vienna. Make sure that you do the Belvedere Palace. What I like about it is that there's two buildings that make up the compound there. And one has a Baroque museum in it, and the other has a 20th century art museum. It's all Viennese art. Gustav Klimt's The Kiss is in the bigger Belvedere Palace Museum. And between the two buildings, you have this beautiful terraced garden, and that's what you see here in this image. Next image shows you the Hofburg. Now we're smack dab in the middle of the city. There are some imperial apartments that you can visit here. Most notably, those that were once where the last famous empress lived, Empress Sissi. That you know, her life was turned into movies, and those movies were incredibly popular in the 50s and in the 60s with Romy Schneider. So she's still. People can imagine what a beautiful empress was like when they think about Sissi. She was also very popular, by the way, in Hungary at that time. This was during the dual monarchy, when Hungary was a kingdom and Austria was an empire. But the ruler of both was the emperor of Austria and the king of Hungary. And you will see this on a lot of buildings, primarily in Vienna. K and K, and that means Kaiser und König, the dual monarchy. It's a symbol of the dual monarchy, that K and K. In Vienna, of course, you know, the included shore excursion, the morning is spent getting to know the city a little bit. Like I said, if you've been there, strike out on your own. It's easy. The public transportation in Vienna is splendid. It's easy to get around. It gives you a great opportunity to rub elbows a little bit with the local population. In the afternoon, we offer you an opportunity to go to Schönbrunn Palace. Like I mentioned, this is really the grand imperial residence of Austria. At the time, Maria Theresia kind of had her eye on Versailles, and said to her architects, look at Versailles, and make that here, but a little different. So the building itself is probably even a little bit grander than Versailles in sheer size. I would give Versailles the more points for the gardens, although these are beautiful. They're really beautiful. I just happen to like the ones here in Versailles a little bit more. But the imperial apartments here, again, they're absolutely spectacular. And if you travel to Europe because of royalty and because of Baroque opulence and because of incredible art, you have to go to Schönbrunn, more or less. It's what you need to do. And then there is a lot more. We will have a video in a minute, right, James? Let me talk just a little bit more, and then we'll get into a little video about a particular hotel. Sounds strange, but you'll bear with me. Because some of the other things that you can do in Vienna, as a city is somewhat obsessed with food. People like to eat. There are lots of great restaurants in Vienna. There is also the Naschmarkt, which translate as the snacking market, maybe. And it's not just snacks that you can get there. People go there to get fruits, vegetables, cheeses, but also, nice little things. They have a lot of these open stalls that you can see in this image, but they also have these little closed, small little shops that sell delicacies from all over the world. So people do go there to indulge a little bit. It's a very indulgent experience. And we take you there with our chef, and so you have someone there that actually understands food at a very very professional level, and that gives you a completely different view on Vienna. It's also the Naschmarkt in a part of town that's very, very colorful. Some really beautiful buildings. Of course, in the evenings we offer music, and there are various different things that you can do in Vienna. You always have to make sure that once you've set your mind on a particular date, then you can start asking questions. You call our call center, or you talk to your travel agent, and you will know what we have on offer for that particular date. There's always music, but what exactly it is that we can offer depends a little bit on the calendar. And it ranges from, if you will, it's a really pleasant best of Mozart and Strauss type of a concert that really hits all the highlights, to behind the scenes with the Vienna Boys Choir, to Austrian prodigy Alma Deutscher, who plays an exclusive series of concerts just for Viking guests. That's just really something that you would need to inquire about. If you're you can turn it around. If music is probably the most important thing that you travel to Vienna for, then first ask about the calendar and then decide at what time of year you want to go there. Okay? And then the next image shows you a piece of cake. And I will not talk about the piece of cake because we have a little video queued up that will tell you that story.
The year was 1832. Vienna was thriving, with the Austrian Empire in full bloom under Emperor Francis I. The graceful waltz and composer Johann Strauss Sr. had captured the Viennese imagination. And a new taste was born when Prince Wenzel von Metternich demanded a special dessert for an important function. Through a twist of fate, the imposing task fell upon the shoulders of a young apprentice, Franz Sacher. Toiling feverishly, he concocted a delectable combination of chocolate, apricot jam, and whipped cream, the Sacher Torte, which, it's said, delighted Metternich's guests. In 1876, son Edward Sacher built upon his father's reputation, opening Vienna's exclusive, luxurious Hotel Sacher. After World War II, the hotel fell into Russian, then British hands during the occupation, before the family restored its beauty and traditions, including one that might surprise you: special treatment for dog guests. The policy began long ago with owner Anna Sacher, who always had her dogs close by. Of course, many human faces have also been greeted warmly into these opulent surroundings. Hotel Sacher feels like a living museum, a fascinating time capsule of country and culture, where every wall speaks volumes about the intriguing past that unfolded here. Even in the cafe, which also happens to be the perfect spot to experience history with your taste buds. The Sachertorte, with its secret recipe that's still made almost entirely by hand. Hotel Sacher is a rare treasure and a reminder of the many wonders just waiting to be explored in Vienna.
Okay, so Hotel Sacher. It's right in the middle of Vienna. You can go there to have your piece of chocolate cake with apricot jam. And all that you need to do is punch your ticket from the subway at the ship to the subway right under Hotel Sacher. It's that easy to navigate Vienna. So that would be my, it's one of a number of things that you can do. There are lots of other cafes. And actually, that's very much part of Viennese culture. People sit in cafes for hours on end. They order some coffee. It's like a living room. They still have newspapers there. They have this in some good cafes all over the world, but Vienna is particularly known for them. They have these long wooden handles that they put a paper in. They lock it up, and that's how and they hang on hooks, and that's how you can read all manners of paper. And it used to be that this is where philosophers and historians and academics would come to read about the news of the world. And that all that they needed to do is every once in a while just buy a cup of coffee. And coffee at the time was very much part of the culture. And so it was one way of staying abreast of what was going on in the world without having to spend any money, because this was all kind of free. Then from Vienna, we will take you through the Wachau. And Vienna, the city of Vienna, is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, as is the Wachau. And in the Wachau, we do something quite special with a local monastery, and we'll show you that first. We'll start with that.
Overlooking Austria's remarkable Wachau Valley is the gracious Göttweig Abbey. Built on land donated by Passau's Bishop Altmann, this stunning Baroque monastery complex, inspired by Spain's Escorial, is actually the third version, with fires destroying most of the monastery in 1580 and again in 1718.
The monastery is 900 years old. Göttweig is a very special place with a great history. It is a spiritual place, a place for freedom, a place for peace. It is a place where the people come together and they go away with much power in the heart.
Göttweig is a Benedictine monastery, an order founded by Saint Benedict of Nursia, a 6th century monk who established the Abbey of Monte Cassino on a hilltop southeast of Rome around 529 AD. An astute and critical scholar of religious practices, Saint Benedict clarified the way European monasteries are organized, how monks should live and work, and what the focus of their religious life should be. His thoughts evolved into the book The Rule of Saint Benedict, a guide for balancing prayer, reading and work, ora, lege et labora in Latin.
Ora, pray, labora, work, and lege means to read. Saint Benedict ordered every monk of his monastery must learn to read and to write. Everybody should read the Gospel for himself. In the daily life of the monks until now, every monk there is a time reserved to read.
And I understand also during meals, you have silent meals, but there is a reader.
Yes, the reader has the possibility to eat afterwards. We read during the lunch and in the suppers in the evening,
Yes.
both.
And I noticed in your private quarters you have a special reading chair.
I like to sit there reading. It makes the view wide and large.
From the beginning, Göteborg has operated differently than most Benedictine monasteries.
We are not so contemplative in our life like other Benedictines. For example, the French monasteries are all contemplative. They do not go outside.
Göteborg always focused on outreach, which was a blessing when Holy Roman Emperor Joseph II began his massive reforms.
Monasteries which have been contemplative, Joseph II says that is not necessary. We need parish priests, we need monks and sisters in the hospitals, we need monks and sisters in the schools, all others you can forget. He dissolved 700 monasteries, but Göteborg survived.
Today, Göteborg continues to focus on the world beyond the monastery walls.
We care for many parishes, 35 at the moment. We take care for schools.
You are teaching in the high
Teaching,
schools.
yes, philosophy. And we have some in the hospitals. We have a house for retreats and a house for young people.
I understand you've also gotten involved with the immigration situation.
Yes, that's nothing new for us. Every crisis, if it has been Poland, if it has been Croatia, we have always refugees in our monastery. And at the moment, it's families of Syria. We try to help so good as possible.
While Göteborg is headed by Abbot Columban, I was surprised to learn he has a cabinet of sorts, and that all the monks have a voice in leadership and the direction of the monastery.
I'm elected by the brothers, and then there is the second man on my side is the prior, then the third man is the sub-prior, and then the monks. There are 5 persons, and if there is a problem in the monastery, I call these 5, come and we have a discussion how to solve.
So every vote for every layer counts equally?
That's equally, yes.
Equal count,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's a democratic system which reached back to the 6th century of St. Benedict. It's no creation of our time, but it's very, very modern.
To fund Göteborg's many parishes and support programs, the monastery's extensive lands are put to work, with more than 13,000 acres of woodlands being selectively harvested to ensure this treasured forest endures the test of time. The slopes around Göteborg are also used to produce the grapes that create the wines for which the Wachau is famous. Grüne Veltliner, Riesling, Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, as well as wines used in Holy Mass. And then there's the Marille, another Wachau favourite. It's also grown under the watchful eye of Göteborg monks, in partnership with nearby orchards and right on the monastery grounds.
That's very nice.
Transformed into tasty juices, jams and even schnapps, ultimately the Marille is yet another way for Göteborg to continue and enhance its community outreach. Though Göteborg has survived nearly 10 centuries, serving amid the distractions of the modern world has perhaps never been more daunting, requiring absolute focus from every monk.
I think the rule of St. Benedict will help the monk to be a man who has a good disposition to heaven, but also good disposition to the earth. It is important that the monk lives his vocation, not only in the monastery, but also outside the monastery. I think everybody can be happy in his life. If I'm in a family, or if I'm alone, if I'm a monk in a monastery, it is important that I live that. What I see, that is my vocation.
At Götwijk, I experienced calmness, a sense of peace, and moments of spontaneous joy. It wasn't the world I'd imagined, but rather one rich in history and spirit, shared by some of the friendliest people I've met.
We are delighted to welcome Viking guests to Götwijk Abbey.
Götwijk opens the door to an intriguing world that I found fascinating. I hope you too will have the chance to explore its many treasures.
Excellent. I want to dwell on this a little bit because I think it's such a perfect example of what we mean when we say privileged access. I think we're going on 10 years now that we first started working with the Abbey to come up with a program that gives you a very unique perspective, that goes behind the scenes, that was crafted in very, very close cooperation with the monks. As a matter of fact, I know that one of them is watching. Guten Abend, Pater Piers. Hoffe es geht Ihnen gut. You know, it's a very close cooperation that has made this possible, to give you something that is absolutely unique that you will not be able to do on your own. And that is, it's been such a beautiful, it's been a beautiful 10 years. I think it's 10 years by now, I'm not entirely sure, but it's been great fun to just put this together. And I think what's really special about Götwijk Abbey is that you can see what a community like that can do when it's really engaged with the surrounding area, with the villages and with the towns. And that's really, the Abbey is still very much rooted in the here and now and in the communities that it serves. Really interesting, really eye-opening. You'll really enjoy that. Okay, and then we just have another nice picture of the Wachau Valley before we move on. This is a ship that is just passing Dürnstein, and that has a beautiful, you see that on a lot of pictures. That's why we have to have it in here. It has this beautiful Baroque church tower that is in tones of blue, in these beautiful pastel colors. Has one of the most, it's a very small little town, but it has one of the most impressive skylines in all of Austria. So that's why we had to show you Dürnstein for a second. We then go on and we will land in Linz in Austria. And Linz is kind of at a crossroads. It's a beautiful city in and by itself. It's one of the larger cities in Austria, and it allows for a walking tour that shows you a lot of the old Baroque city, some of the churches, some of the large public buildings. Mozart did some of his best work in Linz. It also becomes a jump-off point to get to know the Austrian countryside a little bit. We have a farm visit here planned for you, and an optional excursion to a town across the border in what we used to call Bohemia. And that town is Český Krumlov. And that town is built on a series of hills. And that picture is coming up next. And that's still Linz, James. The next one is Český Krumlov. And that sits on a bend in the Vltava River. The Vltava runs through Prague and then ends up in the Elbe near Melnik in the Czech Republic. And on the Elbe, of course, we also have a cruise. I'm making a little plug for one of our other cruises. The river there is still very small, very, very windy, which makes for a perfect cityscape. The river really makes a few hairpin turns through town. And so there's lots of little bridges, and there's buildings on hills and buildings on slopes. And it's a town that has, it's very, very old. There was a Roman settlement there at one point, but it has grown very, very organically over the centuries. And somehow they've managed to, of every architectural period, they've managed to keep some of the real gems. So there's a big Gothic church, and then there are even some vestiges of Romanesque architecture that's even earlier. We're talking the 10th and the 11th century. And then most of the town is Renaissance, and then some of it is in the Baroque style. And it all blends together into a phenomenal cityscape. Even before the fall of communism, it was clear to the Czech government at the time that this was a really unique city. Not anything that stands out in particular, but just the location and how well preserved the town was. That back in 1964, at the time, the socialist Czech government decided to protect the city. And that was quite rare behind the Iron Curtain. Usually, sooner or later, a lot of the old stuff had to go to build flats and factories and what have you, not big apartment blocks. Not so in Český Krumlov, and that's how it's been preserved. And then right after the fall of communism, it became a UNESCO World Heritage Site because it was clear that it deserved protection. After our stop in Linz, we then, as I mentioned earlier, just across the German border, we end up in Passau. And in Passau, 3 rivers come together. And if you focus a little bit on the top of the right-hand side picture, you can see 2 rivers coming together. And that's the Inn and the Danube. The Ilz comes in from a slightly different angle, but these 2 rivers come together. One is kind of muddy, the other one is quite clear. And for quite a while, those 2 streams kind of run alongside each other. So that's not some shade or some clouds that you see there. That's exactly what the rivers look like, the darker blue and the muddier river. And the other shot on the left-hand side just shows you one of the churches in Passau. So because it sits in this valley where all these rivers, where these 3 rivers converge, there's a lot of up and down in Passau. It's a city that's built on numerous hills. The included excursion shows you the core of the old city. This is the great cathedral, and if you're there at the right time, you can listen to an organ concert. We take you around the streets. We show you, we explain the history to you. If you want a little bit more, this is another city that is perfect for when you want to be a little bit more active. You can go on a little bicycle trip along one of the rivers. You can also just stay in town and walk from one side of the old inner city to the other, because you go from the West-Oberburg, which is is essentially a fortress that overlooked the confluence of the rivers, through the town and then back up on the other side. And there is this church that you see in this image, in this next image, that was a pilgrimage place. And you can see right in the middle of the picture that is a covered stairwell. And in that covered stairwell, the story goes that you would go there to be cured of your ills. And that stairwell is full of little plaques that say, "Thank you, Mother Mary, for curing this or curing that." And there are canes and crutches that people no longer needed because they were cured of whatever ailed them. So it's a very interesting part of the religious and cultural history of Passau that you get only when you make it up those stairs. So that's a very active shore excursion. It's the Mariahilf Church, the Church of the Help of Mother Mary. And that kind of concludes, this is another beautiful shot of Passau as the sun is setting over the city. That concludes the cruise portion of your adventure, but we're not done. You can extend on the Passau side as well, and you can either spend another 3 nights in Prague. And if you haven't been to Prague and you've gotten this far, it's a bit of a sin not to go to Prague, because the capital of the Czech Republic is one of the most historic cities in Central Europe. It has literally centuries and centuries of history. It was a very cosmopolitan city at one point. It has a beautiful old Jewish quarter. It has bridges over the Vltava River that are spectacular with statues and things like that. It has an enormous castle on top of a hill. There's an awful lot to see there. We have a good friend there, William Lobkowitz, whose family for centuries owned a small palace within the castle complex in Prague that you can visit. We have a bit of a behind the scenes, not for everyone program set up, another privileged access program set up in Prague for guests. Or you can choose from Passau to head a little bit south back into Austria, spend 2 nights in Salzburg. And Salzburg is the city where Mozart grew up, where he did a lot of his composing. There's a museum house for Mozart there. It's a city that lives off music. It has gorgeous architecture, but of course it's best known for the backdrop of The Sound of Music. And you also spend 2 nights in Munich, the Bavaria's capital, also a grand city with beautiful museums, a gorgeous market, just like in Vienna, a permanent market that's always there, where you can get fresh fruits and veggies and all kinds of other stuff, but also like these little delicacies that you probably spend a little too much money for, but you have to have, because that's the only place where you can get it. And that's a total of 4 nights. You get escorted throughout those, your stay in Salzburg and your stay in Munich, those are fully escorted. You have someone with you all the way. It has a lot of ingredients, if you will. All the touring is included. In Prague, you have a little bit more free time. You have a little bit more, create your own day with the assistance of a local host. Whereas the Munich to Salzburg, that is more of a, if you will, a guided part of the guiding just continues. You have a Viking person with you all day long. That concludes it. And now, Bree, are you there? Can you start asking questions that I might answer?
Absolutely, sir. Before I begin with the questions, we did have a comment from Mika in Montclair, who was happy to see you back and eagerly awaited your return to these lives.
Hi, Mika.
Our first question comes from Rita in St. Augustine, who asks, do we need to exchange money to take this itinerary?
Not really. So officially in Hungary, they still use the forint, but they take euros. So you're almost covered. You're covered with one currency. And I would not, before I travel, I would probably not go and exchange money. I would just bring my ATM card. All over Europe, you have ATM machines. In Hungary, they will probably even by now allow you to pull out euros. If you're at a machine that only produces forints, just don't get too much. And then whatever you get in Bratislava already, those are euros that you can use throughout.
Thank you.
So,
we have a couple of questions from guests about weather who are touring next month. Mindy in Indianapolis shares she's excited to travel this journey next month. Weather is her concern. In December, can I get away with a sweater? Planning on layers, but would love to pack minimally. Also, Hope in the United States asks, for the Christmas delights on the Danube, will I need waterproof shoes? Wondering if I'll be navigating through snow and slush.
No. That's relatively easily avoidable, and it has not snowed very much around Christmas in years past. Not as much as it used to. No, I would a sweater, and then the way I would layer is I would bring a windbreaker / raincoat, and then a thicker layer like this sweater, for instance, or just one of those little down jackets that you can get, and that will do just fine. And then whatever you wear under that. It's not necessary to pack for an Arctic adventure, because it's not going to be like that. I would probably bring some light gloves, nothing really, no big mitts. You're in a temperate climate, and it probably Budapest has the most continental of the climates. And even in Budapest, it doesn't get all that cold. and you don't have to worry too much about snow or sleet. There could be a little bit of it, but it's not going to be. I would bring sturdy shoes. I would not. That's a matter of opinion. When I travel with my wife, I always say, and she's very sensible. Wear sensible shoes more than high heels. I think you need sensible shoes, but you don't need hiking boots.
Thank you. We have many questions about our shore excursions. I'll begin with a question from Robert from Hamilton, Canada, who asks, what is the difference between walking and panoramic tours?
Biggest difference is when you walk, you obviously will not get as far as a panoramic. A panoramic tour is usually, it's our code for you travel on coach mostly. And you'll get off here and there to walk around a little bit and to take some pictures. And then a walking tour is just, you basically spent most of your time walking. I have a very outspoken preference, and it's walking, but that's not for everyone. It's a matter of what can you do, and you can mix and match. One day you just go for a walk, and the next day when you're a little bit more tired, you sit on a coach and you get to orient yourself in the city that way. These tours are always set up, these initial tours, if you will, are always set up to get an orientation and to see the big sites. And then in the afternoons, you can make up your mind to go and do something a little different. My view is that you're quite often, if you can, and if you're ambulant, choosing a somewhat smaller slice of any city that you focus on a little bit more is always my recipe for success. You experience more. It's a deeper experience. You don't always have to try to do everything. Certainly in a city like Vienna or in Budapest, you need to kind of focus on what you will be able to do, not on what you will not be able to do, because there will be things that you just have to leave out, and you need to make a careful choice. That's a lot of what we're about, to make sure that you have all the information at your fingertips that you need to make good choices.
Thank you. Stephen in the United States asks, is there a separate cost for the optional excursions?
Yes, there is. And you will find that as soon as you've booked with us. You can also inquire at the call center. We don't advertise the prices because that is, it would require too much upkeep, and we show you shore excursions, and you can book a cruise that is 2 years away, and we don't know exactly what they're going to cost. But usually, always the call center can give you a really good ballpark of what you're looking at in the way of cost. And then when you book with us, you get an app that allows you to go straight in and book shore excursions. So you will know well before you travel what you're in for financially.
Thank you. Willie in Bakersfield asks, are there new tours associated with this itinerary?
Ooh, that's a trick question. There are always new tours because we try at least every year to add 1 or 2 things. We also sometimes find, we're by no stretch of the imagination perfect. We sometimes find things that people don't enjoy as much as we thought they would, so we try something different. I cannot right off the bat rattle down, what's new, because we haven't really for 2023 not looked at this particular itinerary yet. But yeah, I can tell you that there's going to be some new things. There always are.
Wonderful. Kathy in the United States shares that this itinerary was highly suggested by friends we met on the Paris to the beaches of Normandy cruise we just returned from. Is it true that one of the excursions are waltz lessons with a professional dancer?
Yes. Yep. It's what we look for generally in any city that we cover is everyone wants to see the sights. But we do like to go beyond that and show people what life is really like. We call these local life excursions. We sometimes take you into a factory, or we take you into a place of work, a farm, for instance, that's what we're doing in this itinerary. We call those working world excursions. And then we have these things that are really unique to Viking, to us, things that you will not be able to duplicate anywhere, and that are usually based on our relationship with, in this case, Pater Pius. We call that privileged access. So we do offer the dance lessons is another one of them. There's actually, James, you should try to find that video. We do that at the end, yes? The little video of Karina with Herr Zedelmeier. Karina went there to the school and met the gentleman. And it's a very cute little video. Next question.
Certainly. Russ from Littleton, Colorado asks, the tour of the Benedictine Abbey of Gottwig that Karina had looked amazing. Will we be able to have an exclusive tour just exactly like this?
Just exactly like this. Yeah, mostly. Yeah. You'll see the stairwell. You'll be able to interact with the monks that are there. We'll get you some of the drink that the monks produce of the Marillen, and whatever is happening there is shared. Whatever, if it just so happens that someone comes back from a survey of the forests that the abbey owns, well, maybe we talk to that monk and he can tell you. It really is like that. There's a monk in charge of the forests. Maybe you get to meet him. Yes, it's very much that type of an experience. The genesis of the whole idea was that you see so many churches when you visit Europe that we wanted to do something that goes beyond just looking at a beautiful, and don't get me wrong, Goodwijk Abbey has that. It has this incredible fresco on the ceiling of the great stairwell, and it has a beautiful church, but we thought that it would be fun to go and interesting to go well beyond that. So that's what we're doing there. Yep.
Thank you. Stephanie in Atlanta asks, we are traveling on the Danube from Passau to Budapest in December. Will the panoramic Bratislava be available then, or is that only for warmer parts of the year?
Nope. We'll do it. Yeah. Panoramic tour is always kind of for us, it's the easiest to organize, it's the easiest to execute, and it works for, like I said, it works for people that don't have the luxury of walking around or are getting very active, or so. Yeah, no, it's always a very important element. It's those always happen.
Thank you. Grant in Ripon asks, we are actually on the Grand European Tour in April and have a concert night in Vienna. Is there a dress code for this?
Yes, there is a little bit of a dress code. And this is not so much, this is what you must dress like this. It's more like, put on a jacket, gentlemen. Perhaps dress up a little bit, ladies. Because it will make you feel out of place if you go there in jeans and a t-shirt. That's the gone honest truth. If you're fine with that, look, I have a 17-year-old at home, and he walks around like that anywhere he goes. And when we ask him, he always says, "What does it matter? If it doesn't matter to you, it doesn't matter to you." But those, you dress up a little bit, but nothing fancy. You don't need to wear a tie if you don't want to wear a tie. It's not like you need to wear black or anything like that. It's just elegant casual. It's what you would do in a country club, I think. Maybe a little bit more. Maybe if you're a tie man, you wear a tie, sure, but you don't have to. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. We have some additional questions about Vienna. Let's see. Umberto in Deep River asks, do you publish a program of the optional classical music concert in Vienna? Can we find out this prior to the cruise, or do we have to wait until we are on board the ship?
No, you can because we set this up months in advance, and some of this takes a little bit longer. But what I described is normally set up well in advance, so you can ask, and it's going to be a little if that's what you really want. And if you, for instance, we have a program where we take you behind the scenes at the Vienna Boys Choir, and you get to interact with boys from that choir. It's a world famous traveling choir. if and when Alma Deutscher is there, she's also very interactive with the audience. If that's really what you travel for, you need to ask. You need to ask, and it's going to just be a little bit more work, but I think it's absolutely worth it if that's what you're traveling for. You know, sometimes it takes a little bit of extra planning.
Thank you. That addresses a question from Stephen in Houston, who notes that their booked cruise in late May, he does not see Alma Deutscher concert offered, and asks if she is not booked in 2023. So that answers that. He also asks, how far is the walk from the ship to the soccer hotel and market in Vienna?
Can't walk that. I mean, you could, but I wouldn't recommend it. No, you'll need to take either a taxi or just ride the tram. With a taxi, it's about, in both cases, it's about 20 minutes. It depends a little bit on traffic. Vienna tends to early in the morning have a lot of rush hour traffic, but it's not that far.
Thank you. Some questions now about Budapest. Our guest Joseph in the US asks, we've heard the chain bridge is closed. Have the repairs been completed that we can cross using the bridge?
I think it's still closed. And with that bridge, it's like every other public improvement project. If you read somewhere that it should be that it will be concluded on November 15th, I would still check. I can't make it. I would be very hesitant to say, yeah, no, it's fine. Maybe we can, you know, as we're talking, I can maybe look it up real quick, or I can ask someone. But I believe that it's still going. Hold on. Go ahead, Bree. You can ask another question. I will multitask here.
Very good. We've got a question from Cassandra in New York City, who asks, when we get to Hungary, will we be docked on the Buda or the Pest side of the river? Will it be easy to explore both sides from where we are docked? This is our first cruise with Viking, and we are very excited.
Good. The answer is, yeah, you're on the Pest side, and you are, yes, you can do both on foot, although what I would do on the Buda, if you want to do a lot on your own, I mean, you can also do it with us. The walking tour there includes a little jaunt up with the funicular. It's this little steep tram that goes up and down the hill. Yeah, Budapest is an eminently walkable city if you're good on foot. And I have not found anything yet about the, let's see. No, I cannot find what the current situation is, so I'm going to ask someone real quick. I'll send a little message. Go ahead, Bree, ask another question.
Certainly.
We have here.
Very good. We have Mika in Montclair who asks, where is the hotel located, in Buda or Pest?
Buda. We use a number of different hotels. The hotel that we've used most in the recent past is the Hilton, and that sits in Buda. But again, you would need to, once you've decided on a particular date, ask. Because we have to use several different hotels. We also have some hotels on the Pest side. But for most dates, we still use the Hilton. But if you want to make sure, you need to ask. Okay, good.
Very good. Our next question comes from Dennis, who asks, on the Budapest panoramic tour, is there time to explore the Castle District attractions?
Yes. Now, if there's anything in particular, there are some museums there. If there is anything in particular that you would like to do there, then I would say hop off at that point in the tour, because the tour does take you up to Buda Hill, and then at some point you can just hop off. You can go your own way if you so choose. If that's, you know, if there's a particular place there that you're really interested in, you'll have some time there. But if you're real, like, let me give you an example. On the Buda Hill, in a courtyard, they have my favorite little bookshop. what I would do if I were you, because I really like that bookshop, I would travel on the panoramic tour. You would stop at Hero Square. You would travel the grand boulevards that give Budapest this Paris-like outlook, in at least in parts of the city. And then you go up the hill, and I would get off, and I would let my guide know I'll make my own way back to the ship. And now I'm going off to my little corner bookshop there. I think you can do that. And I think if you're interested in some of the like I said, if you're interested in some of the museums there, if you need a little bit more time, go ahead and do it. It's really, Budapest is a surprisingly easy city to get around in. The only problem that you have is that the language is virtually it's closed. It's a very inaccessible language. Nothing looks like an Indo-European language.
Thank you. Mary Ellen asks, is it easy to get from St. Stephen's to the Viking dock?
Yeah. And again, it depends a little bit on when you travel and what the current situation with the chain bridge is. Easiest way would just be a walk across the chain bridge. So from St. Stephen's Church, you would take the funicular down. At that point, you can walk around the traffic circle that they have there, cross the chain bridge, and down the few steps to get to our ships. If the chain bridge is still closed, if I'm not entirely mistaken, they have a little ferry that runs, and then you hop on the ferry. It gets a little bit more cumbersome if you have to go to one of the other bridges, but it's doable. It just becomes a longer walk.
Lovely, thank you. Robert in Hamilton, Canada asks, is there time to do more than one excursion a day?
Yep. Quite often the way we plan our optional shore excursions is you have something to do in the afternoon. You can take your pick. You can do your own thing. You can relax and stay on the ship, or you can book an optional excursion. That's usually the plan. So yes.
Thank you. Anita in the United States shares that they're touring in May and thinking of booking excursions early, and asks, is it possible to switch our minds closer to the time? Also, can one book tours when on the cruise itself?
Yes and yes. There is an ever so slight risk. It's not a big risk, but there's an ever so slight risk that if you change your mind within 24 hours, that we'll have to charge you a cancellation fee. We try not to do that, but in some cases, depending on what it is, we purchase your ticket or whatever it is, or we order your meal, or well ahead of time. And so in those cases, we would need to charge you a cancellation fee. But we try to be as flexible as we can. It's a good thing. We find our guests generally are planners, people that like to get their ducks in a row before they travel. But some people change their minds. And in some cases, being on the ship and having the chance to interact with our program director, who can tell you in great detail what the shore excursions entail, changes people's minds. They may say, ooh, this sounds like a lot of hard work, if it's a very active tour. Or conversely, people may initially think, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to be bicycling along some river in Germany. And when you're there for a few days, you may go like, yeah, I will. I feel good. The sun is out. This seems like a great way to explore. So we are as flexible as we possibly can.
Thank you. That segues well into our next question from Anne in the US, who asks, for those who walk with a cane and are a little slower when walking, will there be an option of a guide who moves a little more slowly on walking tours for those who need that?
Yes. Yeah, the short answer to that is yes. Yeah.
Very good. Thank you. Some more general questions now. Stephen in Chicago asks, how do we get to Prague and the airport if we extend our trip? Is it preferred to stop there pre or post cruise?
Well, that is up to you. it makes logically from Passau to Prague is easier because it's a shorter drive than it is from Prague to Budapest. And I don't think that on all departures we even offer Prague when you start on the Budapest side. So if you're not all that keen on Munich and Salzburg, the way I would do it is I would do Prague on the Passau end. Don't think it makes much of a difference to do it before or after. And what we see is that it splits relatively evenly. We have as many people book a post-extension as people that book a pre-extension. It's just, where do you want to go? Let's just take Prague as the example. If you book 3 nights in Prague before you get on the cruise, we pick you up at the airport in Prague, bring you to the hotel, then bring you to the cruise. If you do it the other way around, you get off the cruise in Passau. We put you on a bus. Someone travels with you, brings you to Prague. We check you into the hotel. We have a host there, and on the day of departure, we bring you to the airport.
Thank you. Additional questions about extending and adding another segment to their cruise. Barbara asks, if we take this cruise, do they coordinate to get off the cruise and continue on another ship up the Danube for longer cruising?
Yeah, sure. Why not? Do it.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Thank you. Larry in the United States asks, in Budapest, would you recommend visiting one of the bathhouses?
Yes, of course. Now, it's always an interesting question. Get some local up-to-date information from the program director about those bathhouses, because that will determine a little bit on where you want to go. You could go for a very original, very local, and my favorite, and that's just my favorite. Don't make up your own mind. I like the Gellert baths the best because those are in this grand hotel. It's an Art Nouveau hotel that is, but it's kind of the especially the indoor baths are very rustic, if you will. Essentially, it's not co-ed. It's men and women separated, and you sit there. You sit in the bath with a bunch of nude or semi-nude Hungarians. If you want something that is maybe a little bit more genteel, the Széchenyi baths, the ones that you saw in the little video that Karina did, those are a little bit more upscale.
Thank you.
Hope that answers the question.
Yes, a related question from Mindy in Indianapolis, who asks, are there any spas or places to get a massage while traveling on the Danube Waltz? Additionally, she asks, is there a fitness center or gym on the ship?
There's a fitness center or gym all along the riverbanks. You can get all the exercise you need on shore. Walk up the cobblestone street, down the cobblestone street. Now, we don't have a fitness center on the ship. The adage has always been, if you can't do it well, don't do it at all. And the gyms that I have seen years ago on other ships were cramped little facilities where if you really start to get into your stationary bike and you go up and down a little bit, you'll hit your head on the ceiling because there's not a lot of room on the river ships for facilities like that. And yes, there are. And this is, again, we offer, if you will, a concierge service where if you have something that falls outside of the scope of our organized shore excursions, all that you need to do is ask the program director or the receptionist and say, this is what I want to do. Can you make that happen? And we'll say yes. Unless you want a camel ride in Austria, then we say, no, that will only happen in Egypt. But a massage, yes, no problem.
Very good. Dan asks, we booked a morning included tour on one day and also an afternoon optional tour. We only have 30 minutes between them. Can the ship provide us with a bag lunch?
Yes, just ask. Just ask. They can figure something out, yes.
Very good, thank you. Wendy in the United States asks, which excursions are most at risk of filling up in advance?
On this itinerary, there isn't really anything that you have to worry about all that much. No, there's nothing that you have to. We have the filling up of excursions is more of an issue with our ocean cruises because you travel with a larger ship. So you have to, if you want to offer certain experiences, you can't offer it to, let's say 900 people, but you can almost always easily do 190, which is what we carry on a river ship. So the problem of things that sell out doesn't really exist very much on the rivers. I cannot think of anything right now where you would need to book early. I mean, I would do it early just, for peace of mind and to get the planning bit out of the way, but don't fret.
Thank you. Kimberly asks, is there some place we can see on a map where exactly the docking locations are for each city?
Yes and no. Basically, the easiest way to do this is to just use Google Maps and zoom in, and you will be able to see the physical docks. You just flip to the satellite layer, and as soon as you've booked and you have all the addresses, it's easy peasy. I want to caution you because the docks are assigned, but then they sometimes get reassigned. So depending on what it is exactly that you need to understand, and usually it's just, well, can I walk into town? And the answer to that is Krems, yes. The Vienna, no, you need to use public transportation, but we're always in the same spot, and public transportation is ridiculously easy. Budapest, yes. Bratislava, yes. Passau, maybe not, because we have some docks also that are a little bit on the edge of town, but there's a shuttle bus that runs. So we try to make sure that you have the option of walking off the ship, and even if it requires an extra little shuttle to bring you into town so that you can start walking around. If you have, for instance, because this is also a question that comes up sometimes, Uncle Fritz wants to meet us at the ship. That's something that you need to do a few days in advance, because then you will have final docking locations. Nothing will change anymore. A port master in any of these cities has quite a bit of discretionary power to say, okay, I need to move some ships around. You need to go to Steiger number 12, and you need to go to Steiger number 8. And so it's good if you need to have the exact location for that kind of a purpose where someone's visiting you. Ask when you arrive on the ship, because at the beginning of the week we'll know, and it will not change after that. It sometimes changes, let's say, a week or 2 weeks ahead of time, but it doesn't change so much once the ships are underway.
Thank you. Nancy in Millsboro asks, we're going on the Danube tour to see the Christmas markets. Out of all the Christmas markets, which one do we want to be sure to visit?
Budapest, Vienna, and then probably if you're a little sick of them at one point, you could skip the one in Krems maybe and the one in Passau. I would do the one in Linz. I would absolutely do the one in Linz. And if you extend, Munich and Salzburg are perfect around that time of year, as is Prague. Yeah.
Thank you. We have some general booking questions for you now, Joost. Daryl in Lake Stevens asks, would you consider booking early, 5 to 4 months out, a couple of months, or just a month?
I would book earlier than that. The cruises do sell out. The shore excursions, completely different story, because once when we plan for having a ship that's full. A month out is very late. You may get a nice discount. You run a serious risk of just not having any availability in any of the cabin categories or stateroom categories that you would want, or the dates that you would want. I think even 4 or 5 months out is, on average, our cruises get booked much further ahead of time. It's, I think the average, if I'm not entirely mistaken, the average is about 9 months. There are people that want to book now, so at the end of 2022, and people are booking for April and May of 2024.
Thank you. Judy in the United States asks, is there a special accommodation for solo travelers?
Well, let me put it this way. No, there is no special accommodation per se, but I think the biggest question quite often for solo travelers is, well, what will it be like? The fact that you are in a relatively small environment, and the fact that there's open seating during dining, and the dining room fits as many people as there are on the ship. It's very rare that you would not at some stage develop some friendships with other people that travel solo, or even people that travel in small groups. So it's an environment that is quite conducive to getting to know people and spending some time with like-minded people. That's we don't talk about that a whole lot when we sing the praises of our beautiful experience, but I think we could do it a little bit more. It's a great way to meet people. It really is. I'm not just saying that. We have a certain style in the way we do our cruises, and we're not shy about that. We tell you that we don't allow kids, for instance. We tell you that we don't do casinos. We tell you that we don't have cheesy photographers that want to take your picture and then sell it to you for $20 or $25. We don't do any of these things. We focus on a rich experience. We focus on an enriching experience. We have lectures on board. We cater to an audience. Our owner likes to say we cater to the thinking man, not the drinking man. Although, we have fine wines and we have nice beers and things like that, but the focus is very much on a very experiential and a somewhat deeper encounter with your destination. That's the focus. And so you'll have people that are just like you, that want that kind of an experience. And what I have found over the years is that we do a pretty good job by now telling people what to expect. So if you're going to Europe on a beer cruise, you're not doing that on Viking. We'll serve you beer, but that's not the main reason why you go there.
Thank you. Question from Stephen in the United States. He asks, what is the best time of year to travel? We have some time flexibility and are looking for the best deal and the best weather options. He goes on to ask, there appears to be a price drop, and asks, why would these months be less expensive? Are the tours limited during this time?
No, that plays not into it at all. There's peak season where, like any other business, we try to steer the demand in a certain direction. And if you travel in months that are traditionally in very, very high demand, it's going to be a little bit more expensive. So July and August tend to be a little less expensive, simply because it's a little warmer and not everyone likes to travel when it's warm. I think the best way to, in my mind, if you want to make sure that things work according to plan, you can go one of two ways. If you're a planner, you book very early and you get early booking discounts on most, if not all, of the cruises. And then you can take your pick and you don't have to worry about optional excursions or tours not being available. Or you wait until the last minute, but then you don't know what you're going to get. If you have that kind of flexibility, why not? But it's not how a planner would travel, if that makes good sense.
Yes, thank you.
Mhm.
I have a question about water levels from Mark in Houston, who asks, how have the river's water levels affected this cruise?
In general, this cruise is not so much affected by water levels. There are a few spots in the entire European river system that are more affected than other spots. And the Danube Waltz very early on was conceived as a cruise that would steer clear of those, if you will, shallow spots. And it wasn't always just shallow spots. When we first started mapping this, one of the bigger issues was also low bridges, where high water is as big of a problem as low water. And this itinerary between Passau and Budapest has few very low bridges, and it doesn't really suffer a whole lot from low water either. So that's, this one is not impacted very much at all.
Thanks very much. George in Virginia Beach asks, what is the weather like in March?
Weather in March is brisk, but it's usually quite sunny. You'll have a little bit of rain in that week, I think. But it's a really nice time of year to travel. You'll have, sprouting leaves and little blossoms on the trees. Second half of March, I'm talking now. Early March, a little too chilly maybe. But latter part of March, it can be beautiful. It's going to be a little nippy. Yeah.
Thank you. A question from Robike in Paramus in the US. He begins with a Dutch greeting, forgive my pronunciation. Goeiedag vanuit Amerika, bedankt voor vandaag. This is a trip we would like to do as a group trip in 2023, but would like to visit Amsterdam before or after to see my family. How do you suggest we do this, or should we pick a different itinerary?
No, you could do this. You fly. Amsterdam, Budapest is a relatively easy way of connecting. As a matter of fact, Amsterdam is probably one of the bigger hubs for the flights that you book through Viking to get to Budapest. And by next year, the Dutch, and I can say this because yes, I'm Dutch. By next year, the folks in Schiphol Airport will have their act together again. It was a bit of a hairy situation last summer in Schiphol. They had a lot of staffing issues, and the waits got a little out of control. But they should be back to normal operations next year. So just do that. Fly into Amsterdam and then fly on to Budapest. Easy enough.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Just a couple more questions for you. A general question now from Nan in the United States, who asks, what is the best place to visit in February 2023 with Viking? Thinking she is referring to our general catalog of products.
February, I go to Egypt. You can either travel on an ocean cruise if your preference is on a river cruise. I would do Egypt. We have spectacular new ships. I spent some time down there looking at the new ships and traveling with them, and it's the ships, the Osiris. It's a beautiful ship. The program there, the people that we have there are so phenomenal. They're so knowledgeable. They're so friendly. It's such an interesting place. It's one of those places that is, in my mind, it should be on everyone's bucket list. You could also in February, if you want to stay close to home, we have our Viking Mississippi that around that time will be cruising between New Orleans and Memphis. And I was just there too, and it's really interesting. The Mississippi does take you to parts of the country that you don't necessarily visit on the interstate highways, and that makes it quite an eye-opening experience. So you could do that. And we have a whole catalog of ocean cruises. If you want to do something really spectacular, go see the Northern Lights in February.
Thank you. An onboard question from Dean in the United States, asking about the onboard experience. A friend of ours who took a river cruise within the last few years mentioned that seating for dinner was rather set versus open. Just wanted to know how that is typically conducted.
It is open seating. What happens though, what happens, people are creatures of habit. And if I like a particular spot, and if I like my table mates, then I might end up at the same table. It just happens that way, but it's not something that we enforce or condone. Or you cannot make reservations, not on day 1, not on day 6. You cannot say, hey, that's my table. It doesn't work that way. We do want people to have this freedom. But I can see that you get that impression a little bit, that sometimes some tables are always, it's always those same people from Iowa that sit at that table. I think it's people from Iowa.
Thank you. Stephen in Chicago asks, the trip looks great. I would like to spread the word among our family and friends, and asks, are there any group discounts offered?
Yes, you would need to call our group department. Just call up the call center or go to a travel agent and find out what exactly the deals are. Yeah.
Lovely. Before I'm told we have the waltzing video as requested, and before we go to that, I have a final comment from Ethel in Los Angeles, who shares, "This was a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much, Joost."
Thank you, Ethel. See you next time, and we end with a little waltzing video.
The waltz was once the most scandalous dance in Europe. Its provocative moves and intoxicating atmosphere causing an uproar in the 18th century. While forbidden by the church and authorities, behind closed doors, the nobility embraced the waltz and the romantically formal ambiance that accompanied it. Eventually, Emperor Joseph II opened a few balls to the public, fueling the Austrian passion for the waltz. Today, love for the waltz, even among the young, remains strong, thanks in large part to the school of Professor Ellmeyer, Austria's noted dance and etiquette expert.
It was started in 1919. My grandfather was an officer at the Imperial Army, a cavalry officer, and of course there was no army anymore after the First World War, and he thought how to be in a job again where he had to do with young people. That was his objective. He read a book of an officer who was in the Grande Armée of Napoleon, who founded a dancing school in Paris. And he said, that's an idea. And he was a good friend of Margraf Pallavicini here.
And this is the Pallavicini.
Palais Pallavicini here.
So it's the ground floor of a palace.
The Pallavicinis had no horses anymore. They had motor cars in the meantime. And so he said, you can convert these stables into a dancing school.
Yeah, so these arches, these used to be the stables.
All this used to be the stables, yeah. The teachers here were all aristocrats, and the lady assistants, he took all the beauty queens of Austria. So he started very successfully with that mixture here.
Thousands of students have successfully learned the elegant waltz on the parquet floors of Tanzschule Ellmeyer. So I, a self-proclaimed non-dancer, volunteered a bit reluctantly to give it a whirl.
Perhaps you could show me some of the typical steps of the Viennese waltz.
The lady always starts with the left foot back, the gentleman with the right foot forward. So it's just very simple. You do left foot back, then the right foot to the side, and close. And now it's important that the left foot takes over the weight, because the right foot goes forward, forward, side, close, and left foot back. It's left foot back, side, close, and right, forward, side.
We're drawing a box.
Yeah, it's called the carré.
The carré.
Of course, Viennese waltz is also about turning. It's back, side, close, and now the right foot forward, and forward, side, close. Then again, left side, right foot, forward side, left foot. That's the basic steps.
From these few steps, the grand Viennese ball culture was born, a phenomenon that forever changed the face of European dance.
The lady comes to the gentleman and she puts her right hand into his left hand, and she comes closer, puts her left hand on his upper arm, yeah? And you must come much closer. This is why it was prohibited for centuries. And lean back. So now we do it without turning
this
first.
This is going to be the complicated part.
No, this is the easy one because I'm leading.
Okay.
So your left foot goes back.
I don't usually follow men.
Let's make an exception. The left foot goes back and back, side, close, and forward side, and back, side, and forward side, and back, side, close.
Oh yeah, this is not so difficult.
No, you see?
You just have to have the right man.
How many minutes did we need? This is Viennese Waltz. There are about 450 ball festivities in Vienna every year, so you can have a ball virtually every week.
More than 300,000 participants flock to Vienna every year for events like the legendary Opera Ball, with Professor Ellmeyer presiding for nearly a decade.
The opening ceremonies have their traditional basis in the introduction of young people into society.
So like a debutante ball.
Yeah, this is debutante.
So before the debutantes dance, amateurs who have been trained here open the ceremony.
They do, they open the ball. They come in with the polonaise. Then they line up on the sides, and after them come in the guests of honor. The Viennese Waltz is always the last dance. After they have danced, I take the microphone and say, alles Walzer. And that
Everybody
means
waltz.
everybody waltz.
Experiencing the waltz in the hands of an expert, it was easy to understand how the dance captivated a nation and the world. Plus, I discovered a neat trick. If you're dizzy, just try a quick spin in the other direction. Sharing Professor Ellmeyer's passion for the waltz and Viennese ball tradition was an experience I won't soon forget. I hope you'll do what I did and try your hands and feet at this Viennese tradition.